If at 9:27 we're still here, I'm going to close the meeting and say, let's go home. Because we have a clock that's right twice a day, rather than working all the time. So good evening. I'm Councillor Jeff Brooks, the leader of West Berkshire Council, and welcome to today's executive meeting. Sadie, Nikki, do we have apologies, please?
Apologies from Anne-Marie Dodds.
Thank you very much. And then the minutes, members, on pages 9 to 16. Could I have a proposal that these be accepted if you are comfortable with them, please? Councillor Gaines, a seconder, please. Councillor Gawley. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Our next item then is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations?
None have been received ahead of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I welcome members of the public here this evening. I'd like to thank them for submitting questions. Those in attendance will hear your questions and be able to ask a supplementary. I've got the mic on. Are you not hearing me? Okay. And then that sign language not working between us, Councillor Collingham, sorry. The question will appear on screen, as you know, will be answered by the relevant portfolio holder. You then be given the opportunity to ask a supplementary. Please remember that this must be to clarify the response and not introduce any new business. Time for public questions is restricted to 30 minutes. If your question has not been answered in that time, you receive a written response. The 30 minutes was start when I finished talking. And something's going wrong over here. Have I?
No, I was actually going to say I really apologise, but actually I wasn't here at the last meeting, and I've actually proposed the minutes. Can I propose the minutes in my absence?
If you consider them to be true to the best of your knowledge or belief, I don't see an issue with it.
I've read them, and nobody actually asked any amendments, so I can't see any reason why I couldn't propose them. But just to be clear that I wasn't here at the last meeting.
Okay, so through declaration of interest, we have had a slight misunderstanding, and forgive us, members. Councillor Cottingham is going to say a few words about a staff member. Over to you, Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you, Chair. So I wanted to pass on our sympathies to the family, friends and colleagues of Melanie Ellis, who, following her sad, sudden, shocking passing last month, and really pay tribute to her work at the council. So Melanie joined us 15 years ago from Porsche, probably a very unique career move, moving from a business driving over our roads to one which patches them up. Through that time, she worked closely with officers, schools, especially the Schools Forum, and heads funding groups and members. Many members in the chamber this evening will have had the good fortune to have had the opportunity to have spent some time with Melanie over recent years. Melanie worked in a variety of roles in the finance team, and much of the past decade has been the council's Deputy 151 officer. At the most difficult time for council finances, she was a highly regarded colleague who provided clear advice and reporting on which members could have good faith in the decisions that they were making. She worked collaboratively, reaching out to others to ensure that they understood papers and finances, and we know that local government finance can be difficult to understand at the best of time. This is a crucial part of her skill set that meant that she was so trusted. She built strong teams and worked hard to get through a whole range of reports whilst making sure that her good nature and positivity kept shining through. She had a sunny sense of humour, which is important in a challenging role. And one of my last memories of her, starring in the annual Christmas tableau that she made alongside the leader as one of the burglars for Home Alone. Melanie will be missed by everyone who had the good fortune to meet her. She provided overwhelming positive contribution to her colleagues, her teams, the members and the wider West Berkshire community. My sincere condolences are to her family, friends and colleagues. She represented the very essence of West Berkshire Council, and I thank you, Leader, for allowing me on our behalf of everyone to share these few words. Thank you. Thank you.
I think it appropriate if we stand for a minute's silence. Thank you, Councillor Cottingham, for that. So we're back to public questions, and I welcome the members of the public. 30 minutes for this. First up is Councillor, Mr. Ian Hall requested written response. That's question A. So Mr. Hall will get a written response. And then the next one up, hold on a moment, would be Mr. Goatley to, this will be taken by Councillor Pemberton. And later you will be told why. So Mr. Goatley, with you, sir.
Mr. Goatley, thank you for your question. Avis and Young's advice relates to their development brief dated November 2020. It covered areas of significant potential redevelopment across the estate in stages, including residential on the football ground. A subsequent addendum to the development brief dated September 2022 specifically considered redevelopment based on employment uses on the football ground and on land within the council's direct control. That advice has not been ignored, but is effectively in abeyance until such time as there are redevelopment proposals on council-controlled land. Currently, there are no live planning applications for the estate. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I'd like one. Thank you for your answer, by the way. I was really interested in the environmental study that, seeing as I believe you have plans to redevelop the industrial estate, that stated that you need a minimum of 9,000 cubic metres of stored water on your land and possibly some retro attenuation from the town centre. What's happening to that? Because so that's the bit I'm asking if it's being ignored, because all we've got so far is a flawed design of rain gardens that looks awful.
Well, as I said in my answer, the advice in the report is not being ignored. Your supplementary question raises what I would consider to be quite technical issues, but the bottom line is that until such time as we know how different parts of the site are going to be redeveloped, it's very, very difficult to put in place a drainage strategy until we know what that looks like. Thanks.
Thank you for your answer.
Question C, Mr. Pearce.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Pearce. There's no proposed planning applications on the estate. A future drainage strategy can be addressed as and when a significant development proposal is brought forward, and drainage will be considered through any planning application process. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your answer. Yes, I have. The London Industrial Estate and issues regarding drainage have been going on for 15 years now. And as a resident, I'm trying to work with the council to work to find a solution. That there are solutions, but at the moment, I have had a meeting with the leader of the council 7 months ago, and now there is no dialogue whatsoever with the leader or the portfolio holders. Can I request, Jeff, that you could arrange a meeting with the monitoring officer and the executive director for Place, the four of us, to have a meeting to try and resolve some of these issues?
Pierce, you received my email. I don't have anything to add to that email at the moment, sir. Morgan, question D.
Hi, can you hear me? Good. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for your question. On the 23rd of May 2023, the Council's executive approved a report titled Northcroft Leisure Centre Refurbishment Project Update, that was numbered EX4566, to deliver the redevelopment project. Everyone Active, our leisure contract operator, is delivering this project on behalf of the Council. This report was part 2 and not for publication with reference to Local Government Act of 1972 as amended by Local Government Order from 2006. The planned capital costs of the works are £4.6 million. Additional costs for the project amount to £235,745 for the preliminary project design, legal fees, surveys and planning fees. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. Just before most of my questions about finance, so I'd like to add my condolences to Melanie as well in this sad time, and thought the public would like to do that as well. You haven't answered my third point, which is how is it going to be funded, but I'm sure you'll send me a note on that, so I'll be looking forward to seeing that, hearing that. Yeah, the EX4566 was in part 2. My question relates to when was the original EX paper written and when was it approved? And that's not been answered either by my question, unfortunately. So again, if you can answer that for me, that'd be much appreciated.
I think if I may, I'll come back to you on that when I've got the information.
Again, it was quite clear on my question what I was trying to get to. I'm trying to understand the decision-making process. Now, you also mentioned two figures, 4.6 and 235k. It says that they say to me 5.4 million has been signed off, which is a lot more than those two added together. So again, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that's why I want to understand, and the public do want to understand what's going on here and the history of what's going on, because it's a lot of money for an existing facility, and I'm sure you agree.
And looking pretty fabulous as well, Paul. Well, absolutely brilliant scheme for the people of West Berkshire. But nevertheless, we'll get you your answers. We'll get you your answers. They'll be written to you. Okay? I think I've given you 2 bites of the cherry and supplementary.
Well, you haven't really, because you haven't answered my question, Councillor Brooks.
Sir, please. We'll move on. Paula Saunderson. Is Paula Saunderson?
Yep, she's on Zoom.
Ms. Saunderson, lovely, you're there, brilliant. So this is to Councillor Gaines.
Good evening, Ms. Saunderson. Thank you for your question. The Emerging Local Plan contains a number of detailed policies regarding green and blue infrastructure, which take a positive approach to strengthening local and strategic blue and green infrastructure in accordance with the NPPF. It is informed by the local plan evidence, which is evidence-based, which includes evidence on the natural environment, climate change and blue infrastructure. It is therefore not considered that the evidence base for the local plan is deficient in this regard, and given the detailed nature of the relevant policies at present, it's not considered necessary to create a separate SPD. The council is developing its approach to green and blue infrastructure as part of the review of the environmental strategy, which will be considered by the executive later in the year. This will align with the principles of the Natural England Green Infrastructure Framework, which is a useful tool to support local authorities, communities and developers to create a better place for people to live, work, learn and relax. New development will be required to comply with relevant local and national planning policy guidance. I do appreciate that in the local plan, it doesn't actually specifically say GBI, green and blue infrastructure. It does say GI, green infrastructure, but there are several, in fact, there are 14 times it actually mentions blue infrastructure as well as green infrastructure. Do you have a supplementary?
No, I think I'll leave it to an email. But is there, so for developing the framework, because the framework is essential supporting structure and one of the basic systems, and this obviously feeds into biodiversity plans, public open space management, planning pitch strategies, leisure plans, active travel. And at the moment, our GIS is not accurate on that. Is there money in the environment team budgets to produce the framework?
That I can't answer, as the environment's actually outside my area of expertise. Oh, I'm being given a thumbs up by the finance chap. So yes, indeed, there is money in there.
And it's expected, did you say, by the end of the year?
That we'll come back to you.
Yeah. As always, Ms.
Okay.
Morrison, I'm quite happy to end of summer, I'm being told. End of summer 25, I'm being told.
Okay.
But as always, if you and I need to speak, then please email me.
Okay, thank you very much. That's
Mr.
good news.
Oatley, you're up.
Mr. Goatley, thank you for your question. The answer is no. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes. It's a question I asked to your predecessor and possibly the predecessor before that. What is your vision for economic development? I think the public has a sort of right to know because we've just been wasted 2 years in effect.
So, Mr. Goatley, you've asked a question that says, is economic regeneration the poison chalice of executive portfolios? And you've had an answer no. And then you've asked the question perhaps you should have asked as the primary question. Now, Councillor Pemberton will give you an answer, but seriously, I'm giving you a bit of advice here on how you put questions. Councillor Pemberton.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I would echo that as well. The simple matter is, Mr. Goatley, that members step up and down to the executive for various different reasons. Executive appointments are a matter for the executive, as agreed by the ruling administration. I'll leave it there. The reasons for the changes in personnel are not really relevant with respect. Thanks.
And I'll add, and I think it is a good question about the vision, but if you'd asked it, and if you ask it next time, we'll give you an answer. But what you didn't give us is a chance to actually bring it forward, have it to hand, and give you the basics of it, sir. So tactically, I'm giving you a bit of advice for next time, probably, Mr. Goatley. Mr. Pearce, next up.
Mr. Pearce, thank you for your question. The placemaking strategy is available on our website. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, thank you. The strategy was September 2023, and it was only released last week due to a freedom of information request. I brought this question as I'm concerned about the cost of it and whether it's fundamentally flawed. So the council had made its position clear with regard to each. So I asked a question at the executive back in 14th December 23 about the flow rates of the culvert, the Northbrook Stream Green field rates and so on. And the council was very clear in their answer. They said the regeneration programme review sets out the council's ambitions for Bond Riverside as a landowner's perspective and sets out how we aim to bring forward investment. Therefore, calculations will be undertaken and suitable mitigation proposed through planning applications, which is fine. Unfortunately, in May last year, you cancelled the Bond Riverside programme. So the Hemingway design, my question is this report fundamentally flawed and premature? Because you haven't done the calculations yet, as Mr. Goldie is saying, of volumes of storage that's required.
Okay, thank you for your supplementary. With respect, I think we're straying into the same kind of territories we did with the last question, where you're trying to ask quite specific questions about the content of the report itself, which I'm more than happy to answer at a future executive meeting. But your question was, where can I find the report? And I've answered that. It's on our website. If you need the URL, I'm more than happy to give it to you afterwards. But that is the answer to the question that you asked.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Just no, I did ask questions of the executive to try and keep the number of questions down. But however, thank you.
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Morgan. Right, taking the elements of the question in turn, in respect of loan payments, interest and principal, the 3 items, all repayments are provided through the Council's Revenue Capital Finance budget. The Public Works Loan Board borrowing undertaken is short-term in nature, i.e. a period between 12 to 18 months maximum, with both loans fully provided for in 25-26. Borrowing is not allocated on a specific project-by-project basis, but is undertaken on a holistic basis for the delivery of the whole council-funded capital programme, which drives the borrowing requirement and is fully provided for within the revenue capital financing budget. So in short, we don't borrow project by project, we borrow for the entirety of what we do. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Morgan?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that. Again, unfortunately, point number 2 has not been answered. That £10 million that you've recently borrowed, where's that going? I'd like to understand that, if possible. Thank you.
So that's your supplementary. So the answer
no, it's not. I'm just making the point. You haven't answered that. That's not my supplementary. I'm just making the point.
Councillor Cottingham, how you answered the question?
So that is, we talked earlier this week regarding scrutiny about the fact that our strategy is therefore cash flow and working capital. So that's how we are running the business of West Berkshire. We have to fund our cash flow and working capital.
Okay, but I'd like to understand that. But that's not my supplementary is this. I understand that local councils have got a complex financial system. I fully understand that. I also confess that I don't really understand it. But going back to basic stuff that I do understand, you've borrowed £35 million on a short-term basis. You've got interest accrued of that £1.9 million interest. So that adds up to £37.4 million. So my question is, how are you going to pay that money back in the next year? That's my supplementary.
So not wanting to get too technical is we have what we do, a revolving credit basis. So what you do is you borrow the money for 18 months and then you re-borrow. So you actually then pay off the original amount which you borrowed with the new borrowings.
So it's like getting a loan on a credit card and getting another credit card to pay off the loan.
Now you're making a statement.
Well,
you've had 2
So did you, Councillor Brooks, when you said the legislation is looking great. So I just genuinely want to understand where this money is going to be paid from. That's all. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. Is Mrs. Saunderson here?
Yes.
Okay, over to Councillor Gaines.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your second question, Ms. Sanderson. The Council is developing a green and blue infrastructure, a GBI framework, which will be incorporated into the Council's environmental strategy, will guide the Council's operational approach to GBI in relation to the assets it owns or manages. In the case of new developments, this will be required to comply with relevant planning policy. The framework will align with the principles of the Natural England Green Infrastructure, GI, framework, a useful tool to support local authorities, communities and developers to create better places for people to live, work, learn and relax. The updated environmental strategy, which will guide the Council's operation on GBI assets that it owns or manages, also aligns with the AGS and will improve access to residents, residents have to good quality green and blue spaces. The Natural England GI framework and 5 headline green infrastructure standards will be reflected in the strategy. Finally, the Council's emerging local plan contains several detailed policies regarding GBI, which are considered to take a positive approach to strengthening local and strategic blue and green infrastructure in accordance with the MPPF. Do you have a supplementary?
The emerging local plan, which you know that I've studied quite fully, does not have the GBI framework as evidence, which most emerging local plans do. So my concern is that we have to try and have this when we have to have another bite at a local plan review or a local plan, whatever it's called, the next one, because I am a bit concerned that some of the doorstep standards and local standards are being overlooked when it comes to dense development within town centres.
Absolutely agree.
You got a question out of that?
I was just.
So will you, Councillor Gaines, please ensure that that is fully looked at for me? Thank you.
I absolutely agree that we need a GBI in the new local plan, Mr. Sanderson. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Ms. Pearce. Okay, this is to me, sir. As and when significant redevelopment opportunities emerge on the estate, the council will, as you would expect, to secure appropriate external expertise to support our qualified council officers. The cost of these commissioned will be determined by the nature of the proposals, and it will be taken through our procurement process. And so I can't tell you now what it will cost, because it will go through a procurement process to get that expertise in. Do you have a supplement?
Yes, thank you for your answer. I asked this question because so many thousands have been spent on reports on the London Road Industrial Estate. Again, we're waiting for one now on the feasibility of a 3G pitch. And going back to my previous question is where I can't see any commitment to do these calculations. Now, the calculations, I've had a quote for it, between £40,000 to £60,000 for catchment study. So the question is, would you give some sort of commitment to carrying out these calculations before you go any further?
No.
You won't? Okay, thank you.
Next one up, Mr. Morgan to Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Morgan. The answer is no. Do you have a supplementary question?
So you're not planning to postpone any projects? Is that what you're telling me?
Correct.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Pearce to Councillor Pemberton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pearce. Such improvements have been delivered on Bond Riverside in the form of rain gardens along sections of Faraday Road, which I know you will be familiar with. At present, there are no further areas of similar improvement planned. Do you have a supplementary question?
Mr. Morgan to Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Morgan. The answer to your question is no. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. And again, it goes back to the theme I talked about earlier. Looking at the history of this, it started off at 6 million, then 10 million, then 12 million. It's £18.6 million now. Again, I'd like to understand if there's an alternative, which there probably was, to actually outsource the capital to a specialist company such as SSE. I'm just wondering why the council didn't take, especially with the current financial challenge you have, looking at maybe postponing that or really looking at the financial model? That's my supplementary question.
Well, again, Mr. Morgan, and I'm saying this to all of you tonight, you're asking almost a substantive question after the primary question, and it normally works the other way round.
Well,
Now, sir, if you wouldn't mind, I think what you've just asked is a good question, but I think it is so detailed that it's not for this evening. And I'm happy to carry it over to the next executive and take it. You won't have to put it in again, but we're not going to answer it tonight because there's a huge amount of detail justifying a project which is actually another project that's going to be very, very good indeed for the people, the residents of West Berkshire. So that is the way I would recommend this go forward, sir.
Okay, do you understand the point you make? And it's a valid point. What I'm suggesting is if the response would have been yes, you are going to postpone it, then my supplementary would not have been asking about the detail.
But we're not going to postpone it. We've said that
I know,
very
but
clearly.
I didn't know what the response would be. That's why I used it as a supplementary. That's my point I'm trying to make here. Okay.
Listen, I
will resubmit it. Yes, I will resubmit that.
I'm not trying to be confrontational, and I apologise if I seem to be.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm apologising from the chair for that. What I'm advising you is, if you ask a closed question as your first question, there's not much for us to understand where you're going with it.
Okay.
So we give you the straight closed answer, and then you come forward with something quite wide. Do it the other way round, please.
I thought I'd explain that because I didn't know what the response would be. But anyway, I understand your point.
You are a very experienced man.
Well, thank you for saying so. So are you,
And I
Councillor
know
Brooks.
that. And in fact, you would have gamed, if he says no, I'll say this. And if he says yes, I'll say that. Because you've been around a long time.
Well, I sometimes think I can think on my feet sometimes, occasionally.
All right. Sorry, sir. Will you stay there for your
I can
final
indeed,
one,
yes.
please? To Councillor Cottingham.
This is my final question. You'd be
Thank you very
relieved
much
to hear
for
anyway.
your question, Mr. Morgan. Right, so the programme proposed for 25-26 is a combination of projects newly proposed for 25-26 and projects already underway for 24-25. Where planned, expenditure has been moved from 24-25 into 25-26. This is reported as part of in-year budget monitoring processes, including reports presented to the executive. Taking the sports hub, for example, this project is not included in the 25-26 proposed capital programme and is not included within the playing pitch budget allocation. All planned projects are included within the 25-26 proposed capital programme. Do you have a supplementary question, please, Mr. Morgan?
Yes, I do. So can I ask where the budget for the sports hub project is then, if it's not in any of the budgets you mentioned?
So it was within the 24-25 budget as a terminated project. So we actually then...
Terminated project?
Yes.
So you're not going ahead with it?
No. The actual budget element was terminated within this current financial year.
Okay.
Not saying we're not going ahead with it. It's just the original.
I'm surprised it's not in any of the budgets. It's not even the one after the next financial year. That's why I asked the question. So thank you.
Okay.
I'm still confused whether it's in or out, but thank you for your attempt to answer it. Thank you.
Mr. Pearce. Okay. That's concludes members' public questions. I'm now on to petitions. I believe we have one. Councillor McKinnon.
Not council. Thank you, Councillor Brooks. I have a petition here I'm presenting on behalf of the residents of Bradfield and also some residents in Basildon and Bucklebury and Pangbourne as well. And it is as follows. We, the undersigned, call on West Berkshire Council to reverse their decision to grant a full closure of Ashampstead Road, Bradfield, during working hours from mid-February to mid-July and from early October to mid-November. The closure will cause excessive and unacceptable disruption to residents, businesses and emergency services vehicles. Official diversion routes are likely to be ignored by many drivers, causing narrow country lanes to be overcome by unsuitable traffic. Local businesses and charities will be financially disadvantaged by the complete closure of the road to HGV and bus traffic from February to November. We call on the Council to work with Bradfield College to achieve a solution to allow the remedial works to Army House to be carried out with a less disruptive impact on local residents and businesses. And I have exactly 350 signatures.
As I understand it, you present that to Sadie Owen, and that goes through the process.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, I've got item 6, which is an update on the membership of the executive, and you've already seen this evening Councillor Pemberton taking the questions that were put in for Councillor Sturgis. Councillor Sturgis will speak in a moment, but is stepping back from the executive. I'm so grateful to you. I think you've done a tremendous job, and it's been a delight to have you on the front bench with us. We can already see evidence of the work you've done. We got the Paddington Trail. We got the development of the Peace Garden at Newbury Wharf, and great improvements being made to the Kennet and Avon Canal towpath, where we're in a partnership with Green and Common Trust. And all of this makes the district a more attractive place for visitors, for residents to live in, and helps stimulate the economy. We're sorry to lose you, Louise. We hope to have you back in the future. And I know how busy you are. 2 young children, a full-time job, and trying to do a front bench job as well. Thank you so much. It's in good hands because Councillor Pemberton is stepping up to this portfolio, and Councillor Pemberton is already showing tremendous capability on the public protection portfolio, public safety portfolio. I'm grateful to him for taking this on as well. Councillor McKinnon, you'll notice that there are now 9 councillors on the front bench. I can't promise you that will stay like that forever. There is something I'm going to be talking about later in terms of report in the reports, and that's on devolution and local government review. I'm not saying we will, but it's possible in the future that may need to be a portfolio holder of its own. But at the moment, we're down to 9. I look at you because it was your suggestion. So sometimes you have to understand your points resonate. So I know Councillor Sturgis wants to say a few words.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I've just got a couple of things I'd like to say. It's been a real privilege and a huge pleasure to have been on the front bench, and I'd like to thank all of my colleagues for their support during my time. It's not been an easy decision stepping down, but work and family really has to take priority at this moment in my life. But I know that Councillor Pemberton will do a really excellent job. As the leader, Jeff, has said, we've delivered and kick-started some really great projects this year, and I'm really proud of those. And economic development and regeneration doesn't happen in a vacuum, as everyone knows. So I'd like to thank all of the officers who have been involved in delivering the work over this past year. And I'd also like to extend a special thanks to the economic development team, who have been hugely supportive, delivered some great work, and are a great bunch of people as well. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Louise. You know, it's not a political point, but it's so darn hard for people to do a front bench role. You will know this from your own time in power. Have another role, a job that they're probably trying to hold down, a family to, you know, see now and again, for goodness sake. And it's a tribute to all of us. Any councillor who's prepared to step up and do a front bench role, particularly within administration, but even on the opposition side. And it's a fault in our system in many ways that we ask people to do almost a full-time job as well as their own full-time job. I won't get into remuneration. Let's not get started on that. But frankly, I'm delighted with what you're doing, all of the front bench, and please keep doing it. And I know how hard it is trying to juggle all those balls and spin all those plates. Thank you. So come now to item 7. I'm going to take, if you don't mind, 7, 8, 9, 10 sort of together. The process we've gone through for years is that we generally note the budget papers. There's no debate on them tonight because otherwise we're choreographing what we'll do in 2 weeks' time, which we're all looking forward to. And therefore, to the observer, it looks as if we're not talking about these important matters. But as I say, we pass them through, we refer them to council for the debate to happen there. What I will do, though, is take any questions of clarification, any uncertainty or confusion in the papers at all this evening, if there should be any. Otherwise, I'm going to be moving on pretty quickly. So, Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. No, just to say that you'll notice in members' questions, I have a couple of questions related to items on the agenda, which are the budget papers. So those are my questions of clarification. So they're already on there. And as you say, the convention is to node these through, for want of a better word. So we'll be holding our fire for a couple of weeks.
Very good. Thank you for that. So I'm straight on to, if members, do I need to propose and second that they're referred through? I do. You're proposing?
Yeah, I propose.
I'll second that. All those in favour? So proposed and done. And that's, do you need 4?
You should formally go through.
Yeah, so that was number 7 for the avoidance of doubt, but you knew that, didn't you? Number 8, Councillor Cottingham.
I propose the report.
I second. All those in favour? This must look so arcane at home. It really must. Number 9.
Leader, I propose the report.
Seconded. All those in favour? And number 10, please.
Again, Leader, I propose the report.
Seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed.
Sorry, Leader. Tony, just to let you know, Tony Vickers has his hand up at home.
Who had his hand up at home?
Yes.
Councillor Tony Vickers? Come in, Councillor Vickers. This must be a question for clarification, sir.
He's just being promoted now.
He's just been what?
Promoted.
Promoted.
Hello. Yes, I had my hand up, but it didn't seem to appear anywhere. Sorry, Leader. Yeah, it's a question I had ready, but I was 15 minutes late submitting because I was waiting to be advised which executive member to ask it.
We are.
It really, it's really across the whole executive. It refers specifically where I need the clarification is page 85 of the agenda, para 5.4, where the really good news that we're getting £2.4 million to the neutrality issue in the River Lambourne is featured, but there's no detail of what that is. And it just happens to be the fact that today, a member of the team at North Wessex Downs was visiting a couple of farmers because they've also got some funding for a project in the Lambourne. So my question, to put it briefly, is how are we coordinating the activities of projects that are largely funded by DEFRA with the projects that we're funding, so that we get the most efficiency out of it? Because it's cross planning, it's across economic development, it's across particularly the environment. And I'm just concerned that with more and more of us needing to understand what's going on in the countryside, that we are all joined up with these funding streams. So I'm wondering if anywhere, for example...
We've got it. I think this was a question you submitted, but you were a bit out of time, Councillor
I was
Vickers.
15 minutes late actually submitting it to executive cycle, and they were very quick getting there.
To weave it in anyway. That's
At your discretion, Chairman. Thank you. I know.
Discretion. I think Councillor Gawley may want to resolve. Councillor Gaines, one of you will give you an answer, not a supplementary. Take it offline. These are all your colleagues. You could ask them anytime, you know. But anyway,
well, I'm trying to get a shout out for the good farmers and landowners in my ward and the other rural wards in the AOMB.
Consider it done. Councillor Gawley.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Vickers. In summary, we're feeding potential projects and kind of oversight through the environment team. This was newly granted funding just before Christmas, and it is a fantastic opportunity for the Lambourne Valley and one that I'm thoroughly looking forward to getting stuck into. But the best place is to filter these through Jenny Graham and the environment team so we can make sure that we pull all of these strands together and don't duplicate effort and work.
Right, that's me done. Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you. Councillor Cottingham, you're introducing item 11. I think you're proposing it and I'll second it.
Thank you, Leader. I propose the report.
Nothing to add to it then, sir?
Well, I'll do you want me to go? I'll go through the actual recommendations.
I think you should.
Yeah, to note, the 24-25.
I'll second it.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting.
If he's happy.
Right.
And back to you.
Thank you. Right, so to note within the report, 24-25 Q3 capital underspend of 9.2 million. So that's the original number was 58.5 million compared to 49.3 million. The changes within the budget include the Q3 position detailed in Appendix A. We're here to approve the allocation of 200k of council funding relating to occupational therapy equipment to ensure that the planned project expenditure is managed accordingly. The Capital Strategy Group met on Friday, the 18th of October, and authorised an additional 200,000 pounds for this scheme.
Thank you very much. Does any other executive member wish to add anything to that? Across to the other side then. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks, and thanks, Councillor Cottingham. We had a discussion on Tuesday about this, as you know, and I think you answered my questions quite well then about the capital programme. I did have some questions then about the capital programme that's going to be presented in a couple of weeks. And I think I also mentioned on Tuesday that the themes in this Q3 update are very similar to the themes that were in Q2, which I had some questions about, why these projects were being postponed, and was it because officer time's been neglected? Officer time's been sort of directed elsewhere. So if I was to ask any more questions on that tonight, I'd be repeating myself. So apart from the time that I've taken up with this statement, I don't have anything more to ask.
Okay. Then I think we are ready to probably, agree the recommendations. No other people want to speak. I'm looking at Councillor Marsh on the screen. Mr. Chiverton, you'll let me know if there's hands up. All those in favour? Thank you very much. And then you're on to revenue performance, aren't you, Q3?
I am. Thank you.
Proposed. I'll second.
I don't think it needs to be proposed. Does it need to be proposed?
It's a noted item.
It's a noted item.
Thank you. Okay. Back to you.
Right. Thank you, Leader. As Councillor McKinnon has just stated, we actually debated this report at scrutiny on Tuesday night. This gives the forecasted outturn for the financial year, current financial year of 24-25. The difference between the Q2 and the Q3 report is an increase of 400k of additional spend, of the overspend. So the actual planned overspend, which is being forecast for this current financial year, is 11.5 million. That overspend is predominantly, as we've talked about previously, within adult social care, home to school transport and children's social care. Within the original budget, there was a degree of flexibility to absorb this 11.5 million and also utilise the planned increase in reserves for this current financial year, but also reduce the reserves to a projected amount of roughly 3.4 million. So we're all well aware of the precarious nature of the council finances, of having to deal with the pressures which we face, especially adult social care, children primary services, and home to school transport. So as I say, at the moment, the projection is that we will be ending the year at 3.4 million of reserves.
Any other member wish to add anything to that? Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, I do have something to add to this one. It's more of a question to you, actually, Leader, rather than Councillor Cottingham. And it's a question that is meant in good spirits, and I hope you take it this way. But do you remember when I was in Councillor Cottingham's position at these quarterly updates, presenting some overspends and some underspends, if you remember? You gave us some pretty harsh criticism about the model not being accurate and the model should have been better. I just wonder, given the current situation, do you think in hindsight you might have been a wee bit harsh at criticising the model back then?
And yet you're deciding not to refer to the very considerable financial pressure you were under during the pandemic, when I was not harsh at all. I could not have been more supportive. So selective memory is, you know, something that you might want to think about. I don't think I was over harsh on you, and I don't suppose you'll be over harsh on us. You'll be what you are, and we respect you for it. Moving on. 13, devolution and local government reorganisation. This is a subject following a white paper from government that is gathering quite a lot of pace. Members will have seen that 9 bids have gone into government of being fast-tracked, involving large councils up and down the country. This will affect our district. It will affect the county of Berkshire. It will affect the county of Oxford, the county of Buckinghamshire. And this report provides the background to 2 aspects. One, the strategic, either mayoral authority or strategic authority, a foundation strategic authority, or an established strategic authority, that overarching organ, public body, that will do the strategic consideration in a much larger area. And we could look at 1.5 to perhaps 2.5 million people in that area, often with a mayor. And I will share with you that correspondence from the Minister, Jim McMahon, from MHCLG, has stated their preference, this government's preference, for dealing with mayors, not just civic mayors, but political mayors up and down the country. And as I understand it, they'd rather deal with 50 mayors than 400 councils. So that's the direction of travel on the larger authority. I can share with you that leaders in Berkshire, Oxfordshire, Swindon have had conversations about that authority. And this is for you to enable me to continue those conversations. We've been very informal up to now. And I'll talk about how we might go forward with this in a moment. So that larger authority, we will see if we can get some agreement to bring to our councils to say this is what we think would be a good solution, and put that into MHCLG. The process for that, I'll come to in a moment, because let me touch on local government reorganisation, where they are looking for an area to have unitary councils of about 500,000 people. We don't know what the minimum might be, but we could be talking about 400, 450, maybe up to 600,000, 700,000. So we don't quite know the stretch in that. What they are not comfortable with is districts and unitary councils of about 160, 170, 180,000 people. So at some point in the future, this will affect our council. I'm putting together a DAG. We've got a PAG, we've got a TAG, we've got a bobtail. Sorry, we've got an EAG. And for one meeting, one night only, one meeting only, I'm putting a Devolution Advisory Group together, cross-party, to meet pretty quickly, within 2 to 3 weeks, to consider what might be good solutions for our unitary council. I consider that we may well get to a point in March where we may want to put in a bid to government in very, very broad terms. No detail, just an outline of what we think may work for us as a unitary. Because our choices are to sit back and wait to see how things unfold, or to perhaps help shape our future by saying to government, we think this could work for the residents of West Berkshire. That work has to be done, but I'm in favour of some acceleration of this rather than a wait and see. So members, that's my update, and I'm hoping to get your support. I think is it proposal? No, it's a noted item, but I'd like to feel that I had the council's support because it affects all councillors, all parties. Any changes would last, well, this last one has lasted nearly 30 years. In 1998, I led the final council meeting at Shire Hall of Berkshire County Council. Time will tell if I lead the final council meeting of this council and become the grim reaper of councils throughout West Berkshire. But nevertheless, I jest. I'm hoping to get support or nods that this is an appropriate way forward, to be ahead of the game, really, because as I say, it could be a 40, 50-year decision for us. So any comments from portfolio holders, executive? Councillor Codling.
I just think it's a sensible move, leader, to actually be proactive and not have this done to us and actually have a say in what happens. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Abbs on screen.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think you're reading the tea leaves correctly, sir. There's no point in sitting back and letting it happen to us. We need to be part of the conversation. So you certainly have my support in putting a team together to at least put some kind of ideas into the bowl.
Very grateful to you, Councillor Abbs, as always. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. In terms of the pathway that you just outlined, so it's Devolution Advisory Group, I think it is, isn't it? Then yes, we welcome that, and we welcome our opportunity to be involved. So once you let me know how many of our group you would like on that, then we will get onto that straight away. I agree with Councillor Codling. It would be nice if we can be proactive and help shape the conversation. No matter how proactive we are, there is a risk that it's going to be done to us anyway. And I think it's worth saying that I think certainly my position, and I believe the sort of regional Conservative Party position, but for what it's worth, it is my position that I don't really like it. I'm concerned that power is going to be taken away from local people. You know, there's going to be less representation. But to this point, the government haven't listened to me really as an individual, which is a shame. They'd do a lot better if they did, but there we go. So yeah, I fully support it, and thanks for the update. You mentioned the toxicity of your CV potentially about being the Grim Reaper of Berkshire County and now West Berkshire. You remind me of a friend of mine from university. We'll call him Alistair, because that's his name. And he has the distinction, if he's watching tonight, you'll know I'm talking about him. He had the distinction of working for Arthur Andersen in 2002. Yeah. And of course, he very quickly needed a new job. So he went to join Lehman Brothers and was there for 6 years till September 2008. So don't worry, Jeff, your CV will never be as toxic as his.
No, although if I tell you I had over 100 people working at Lehman Brothers at that time it went pop, you'll know I've got a bit of painful scars from that as well. Moving on. Thank you very much for that, members. I'm on to item 14. beg your pardon, I'm sorry, Councillor.
Pleasure.
I'm sorry.
I think we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, which is good news. It might be helpful there to have a very small background paper on just what the populations of each of the results.
Absolutely, yes.
Just so we have
More than
500
that,
might
you know,
fit together.
the economic strength of them, the GVA, you know, background to the various areas. We're putting that sort of, yeah.
Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Brooks, Chairman, I've got my hand up as well again.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, you said you and I were both there at that time, back in 1997-8. Well, 96-7 actually, and I was actually the if you like it, the Grim Reaper for the old Newbury District Council, as was then. I have to say it was an extremely divisive and expensive time, and I just feel a bit like Councillor McGinnon that, you know, when we got so many other challenges in local government and, you know, even central government, this would not have been my priority at this time. And our party has different solutions, much more bottom up, for proposing devolution in England, which I believe we need. Ever since we got rid of the regional government tier, we needed something between this level we are at, because of course central government can't deal effectively with 400 different creatures. So on balance, I support what you're telling us you propose to do, and I'm just saying, if you think I would be helpful as a member of this group, given the other commitments I've got and will have in the coming year, because this is likely to be more than a 3-month job, isn't it? I think. So that's me.
I'm grateful to that, to you, sir. I do remember 1997. I first sort of met you around about 1997. We've managed to get along all right since then, haven't we? And thanks for your job application. Let's move on, I think, because otherwise we'll get into the merits of Newbury District Council versus Berkshire County Council versus who knows what. Thank you very much. Item 14 is companion bus passes, and I think Councillor Gawley, this is a response to a motion, I think. Over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I'll be obviously happy to propose this paper, but just a kind of quick.
And I'd like to second that proposal.
Thank you. Yes, just a quick kind of update, really, I guess. So, first off, thank you to Councillor Mast for bringing the motion to council and the discussion that followed at the Transport Advisory Group after that. Whilst in principle I support the reintroduction of the companion passes, I think it's important that at this time, whilst we're waiting for an outcome of central government review of the statutory minimum scheme and the lack of the clarity on the bus service improvement funding longer term, I don't think it's the best time to implement changes. I think it's also worth highlighting that very recently our neighbouring authority, Hampshire County Council, are proposing to remove their companion bus pass scheme, which also complicates the possibility of reciprocal agreements with local authorities. However, in the meantime, I've written to the Secretary of State for Transport and our local MPs to lobby and press for action on this topic with regard to an update on the central government review and the timeline of that, and also to strongly urge the reinstatement of the statutory requirement for the companion bus pass, and importantly, the central government funding to support its delivery. Alongside this, I've also asked in my letter for the fare cap increase, which moved up to £3 recently, to be reversed, as this is also having an adverse effect on patronage across our bus services and impacting those who are most in need, and obviously impacts the opportunity for choosing environmentally friendly modes of transport. So I do look forward to revisiting this topic within the timeline of the review set out for Department for Transport, and it's definitely something that I'd like to keep under review. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Would the seconder like to add anything to that?
No, I think that was pretty comprehensive, Leader.
Thank you. So any other comments? Obviously, Councillor Marsh, over to you, sir.
Thanks very much, Councillor Brooks. Thank you, Councillor Gawley. I do actually appreciate and your comments at TAG and the ones you've just reiterated about supporting this in principle. Can I just ask one question, really? Well, two. The first one is the figure for the cost of introducing this seems high to me when we were told, first of all, that there's not much of a demand, because nobody ever asks about it, or very, very rarely. But at the same time, it would cost £40,000. And I just wonder, are you confident that the figure needs to be that high? Could we, for example, introduce a scheme where it was quite strictly controlled to as it were, the most needy cases? Because there are people who rely on this so much. For example, if you're completely blind, you cannot go on a bus by yourself. And I'm just wondering whether there's any leeway there at all, so that a smaller amount of money, or even a pilot scheme involving a smaller amount of money, could be introduced. Would you consider that, rather than just saying we can't do it unless we get the money from the government? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's something that I'm sure Mr. Winstanley would probably get fed up with a number of options that I've proposed and considered trying to look at an efficient, cheaper way of delivering this. But I think that the challenge is that it comes back to the kind of setup cost initially. So obviously, when it was running originally, all of the kind of one-off upfront costs were already there, and it ticks over business as usual. When it was taken away back in 2016, obviously all of that setup is gone. So we would need to reinvest in all of that setup costs again to deliver this scheme. And I think the challenge we have is with the uncertainty around the kind of transport funding from central government, is what I would hate to do is to re-establish it, but then for some funding to be lost next time round and not be able to continue it. For me, the key is being able to deliver a accessible and sustainable approach to this, rather than setting it up for 1 year and then having to reconsider our options the following year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, so any other comments? I'm looking for members to support this. We've got all those in favour? Thank you very much. Item 15 is with Councillor Patrick Clark. I'll take a proposal and then I'll do what I should do and take a seconder, so Nicky's happy. Are you proposing this, Councillor Clark?
I certainly am.
Do you have a seconder?
I hope so.
Councillor Foot?
No, Councillor, I'm seconding that, Leader.
Oh, Councillor Foot, you've been bumped.
That's what I've been told.
Councillor Gaines, okay. Yeah. Are you happy, Nicky? Okay, back to you, Councillor Clark, to introduce the item.
Thank you so much. This is a report close to my heart, having sat on the task force before becoming a cabinet member. So my name's actually on the report, and I remember fondly the extensive questions that we had from the amazing people who expended huge amounts of energy and generosity in working to look after us all during the pandemic. Obviously, as I said, we should support the findings of the report and the recommendations set out. And if you look through Appendix B, you can see that we have either accepted or implemented a majority of the recommendations. But I would add in there that there are a few recommendations that we can't entirely support. For that, I am sorry. But these are practical considerations and in no way belittle the excellent advice set out. For example, we can't always keep PPE stocks refreshed because of the expiry dates that are included, costs, etc., etc. We will be talking about costs a lot. And again, these reasons are set out clearly in Appendix B, but I would urge my colleagues on the executive to support the proposed action plan that has been developed in response to the recommendations raised by the task and finish group.
I think before I bring Councillor Gaines in, it was a really thorough piece of work. It's a good example of scrutiny in action, and there's a lot to learn from it. Councillor Gaines, have I just said what you were going to say?
Yes, Leader. Thank you, anyway.
Sorry. Okay, I can't take it back now. I mean it. So we have a proposal in a second. Do I have comments? Councillor McKinnon.
You do. Thank you, Councillor Brooks, and thank you as well for and I'd like to say thank you to the task group, actually, for such a thorough piece of work. Councillor Clark did that very well, so I'll sort of back him up on that. And it struck me just remembering COVID. I mean, can you believe it's nearly 5 years? I remember being in this room 5 years ago for the budget meeting, so almost exactly 5 years ago, and I think, Councillor Brooks, you had a question can't remember what it was, but it was a question about, what's because it was just coming down the line then at the start of March. And the point I'm sort of rambling on about, and I'll try and make it quickly, is that during COVID, it brought out the best in an awful lot of people. And my colleague and very good friend, Councillor Docherty, who was leader of the council then, I saw how incredibly hard she worked at that time. And as far as I'm aware, and she never breathed the words to me of any issues she had with the opposition. And in fact, it was a very good example of all parties coming together at a very difficult time to do the best that we could for the residents. And no, I don't think any local authority or national authority's response to COVID could ever be perfect. But at the time, I was very proud to be part of an executive and part of a council that really stepped up and delivered a very good response, I think, for residents. So thank you to the task group for this report. And yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, any other contributions? Then all those in favour? Thank you, members. We're still with you, Councillor Clark, on item 16, carriage strategy. You're proposing. Do I have a seconder and the same seconder? No, I got to Councillor Foote. Yeah, I'll take Councillor Foote this time. I'll only say what you're going to say, Councillor Gaines. Sorry. Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Foote and Councillor Gaines, on that. I've said before, mentioned before, a few months ago, how important this document is, and that this is the kind of document that I really like the council producing, because it shows how highly we value the input of unpaid carers, and it's the sort of document that it is proper that we recognise and note. So as a result, I wholeheartedly recommend that we publish this report, strategy, sorry, to demonstrate to unpaid carers how much we support them.
Grateful to you, sir. Did Councillor Foote want to add? I think perhaps now, yeah.
Well, not really, Leader, other than just to support that. We are hugely indebted to our carers, and we're very, very fortunate to have them in the district. And yeah, I applaud this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from other members or questions or whatever? Councillor Bowick?
Thank you. Looking at the equality impact assessment, by the way, just as an aside, I note that this is an equality impact assessment. Elsewhere in these papers, I have seen equity impact assessments. And I don't know at what point equality EAIs became equity impact assessments, but that's for another discussion. The two are very different. The two words are very different.
Do we need some clarification from Nikki? We've got two, they're different and they're getting confused. Is that your point?
I'm not confused, no.
Sorry, I'm as well.
No, I'm puzzled by the use of the word equity instead of equality.
I think that has changed, hasn't it?
Yes,
in legislation.
It has.
Yeah.
And well, so I think a report came here. So both documents. So there is a historic one, which will be the equality impact assessment, which is a document that we have used for a long time. Looks at and I suppose prompts consideration of all the legislative requirements. The equity impact assessment is something that came through to executive and goes beyond those strict legal or legislative requirements to consider characteristics such as will this impact people who are care experienced. So it goes slightly beyond those tight legislative requirements to consider some other very relevant considerations that we might want to have that will impact equity. So that has come here, and all the reports should consider that, although the old one will meet the legal requirement.
Does that help?
That helps, thank you. Turning to this impact assessment, I think it's lacking. If we look at section 2 which talks about which groups might be affected by the introduction of this strategy and what might be the effect on the groups. There is that column there, what might be the effect, only describes the fact that we have carers who are older, some have disabilities, and some have come from diverse ethnic backgrounds. It doesn't say what the effect might be. And there is no information to support the assertion, if it were made, that the strategy might affect the particular groups. And then we go on to number 3. Are there any aspects of the proposed decision that could contribute to inequality? It says yes. As does the next question. Will there be an impact upon the lives of people? Yes.
Adverse.
Adverse, yeah. So this assessment, to be blunt, is poor.
You've been blunt. I'm not sure we're going to agree that it's poor. We don't have, we do have Mr. Coe in the room. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't see you. Councillor Clark, do you want to answer? I think Paul Coe should as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Burke, I think you make a really valid point. I think that we should have picked that up through the quality assurance process, and we haven't noted, and we'll seek to do better.
Yes, but it gives me pause. Because now I'm uncomfortable adopting it. Councillor Clark.
Can I suggest that we take it away and report back to the council with an updated response?
Unless there, hang on, I can see you, Mrs. Clark. Unless there are overriding time constraints on this, time pressures, I'm inclined to bring it back. And I think that's potentially the right thing to do. I'm going to take Mrs. Clark and I'll come back to Councillor Burke.
I think I was just going to say, if we take the equality impact assessment away, because you're right that there is that kind of apparent contradiction in that paragraph 3, all I would say is, if there is a decision is taken that may have an adverse impact on equalities, then the process is that there would need to be a stage 2, so you would monitor the potential impact. So it would have to be come back the officers would have to do a stage 2 review in due course. So I don't know whether that would give you sufficient assurance, Leader. I think Paul Coe has indicated that it could come back to the next meeting. So I will leave that with you. I think if there are impacts, they will have to be reviewed and monitored.
Mr. Coe again, I've got you, Councillor Burke.
Yeah, I'd like to be clear that it is my strong belief that the strategy and the implementation plan will be very good for carers. It's a good thing to do for carers. What has happened here is an officer has ticked the wrong box, and we haven't noticed that she's ticked the wrong box. So, but the strategy is sound in my view. All of the work is sound. This is somebody who's ticked the wrong box twice.
So for the avoidance of doubt then, if you say that the wrong box was ticked, then you are effectively saying that there will not be any aspects in 3, and will the proposed decision have an adverse impact upon the lives of people? You are saying no.
I am saying that the intent of the strategy is to support people who have a difficult life through being a carer. This should be good for people who may have other.
So are there any aspects of the proposed decision, including how it is delivered or accessed, that could contribute to inequality? You believe the answer is no. The avoidance of doubt. And similarly, the second one is no.
That's correct.
Councillor Burke, you've been mean to come back, quick to come back. Do.
I think the point's been made by Mr. Coe, because this paper says that there will not be a second stage assessment, so you kind of got to get around that. If this paper is adopted, presumably we're saying, no, we don't need a second stage, but we do. But section 3, I get the point that it's the wrong boxes have been ticked, but the preceding section is meaningless. Where we say, so just looking about what I'd expect to see, it says which groups might be affected and how, is it positively or negatively, and what sources of information have been used to determine this. Group affected, I'll just use this one, age, several carers are older adults caring for loved ones. But that's not an assessment of the impact. It's just saying we have some older, what they should say is, hypothetically, that older people may not be served well by this. I'm just making it up a bit here, but that work doesn't, that assessment doesn't, table 2 suggests that it's not been done. The assessment has not been done.
I hear you, and I see the strength of feeling. Councillor Sommer. Stuart. Sorry.
I know, I'm confused by who I am as well. I just want to add to this. I don't know what the proper process should be. I think it is right that we have a carers strategy. It's a fabulous thing. This document does have, unfortunately, quite a few errors. So there are, and I wouldn't normally bring this up, and one of my former colleagues would have loved to be bringing up things like that. I wouldn't normally, but this document is going to be published and shared publicly, and we don't want to look daft. So, for example, on page 10, it has the word communication, but there is a T missing. It's quite a bold graphic, and it's quite obvious that it is incorrect. And the storyboards, which I love, about the young carers and giving people a real understanding of what it means to a young carer, some of these scenarios. On page 17 of the strategy, the second box, I think somebody has perhaps put the same line in twice. So I would caution before this goes out and published widely that somebody just reads through absolutely every single piece just to make sure we've got it right. Thank you.
Members, if I was sitting there and we say we'll accept it, I'd call it in. So we're not going to approve it tonight. We're going to take it offline. Sorry, Councillor Clark. Sorry, Mr. Coe. We're going to look at it and get it robust. There might be 1 or 2 issues that need correcting. I'm going to invite you, Councillor Stewart, to contact Mr. Councillor Clark. You've made some points. Councillor Berwick as well. Yes, absolutely. And therefore, this is going to be deferred. Did you want to come back?
Yes, please, Leader. I want to make a specific point relating to the strategy itself. Thank you for, I support your decision. I think it's the right approach. But I want to give feedback on this particular, on priority number 6, which is about providing support to young carers to have a life outside caring, to enable carers and young carers to achieve their potential. Now, I'll just make a brief point on this. Pretty much the only support that's being offered at the table in the summary table and later on in the document is training, a couple of training sessions a year. And I think that Councillor Codling would probably agree with me that young carers find themselves in this situation need an awful lot more than this strategy is providing.
Councillor Clark, we've had a bit of turbulence. Please.
By turning my microphone on, apologies. And I'd like to thank Councillor Berwick and Councillor Stewart for their comments on this. It is important we get this right. Completely agree. So thank you. On priority 6, I think there are other points that are made here. It's not just about training; it's also about recognition, and that's one of the purposes of this report.
I did read all the strategy and I noticed the other 2 points. It wouldn't be good enough for my child.
Okay, I'm not going to let you back now. We've deferred it. What I don't want is a false start again next time or a call in. I want to get it right next time. So I would urge you, now you've seen the bulk of the document and you could mark it up if you want to, please, if I could ask you to communicate with Councillor Clark, Mr. Coe, because when we bring it back next time, let's make sure we're all on board. Is that fair?
Perfectly fair.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Codling coming up for item 17. Now, you can introduce this because it's a bit confusing, but I know you're all over it. So you're proposing it, and who's seconding it, please? We're all rushing. I'll second it then, since nobody else is rushing. All right, Councillor Gaines. She's determined to second something and speak to it, I think, tonight. Councillor Codling, please introduce. And bear in mind, members, the vote will take place in part 2 on this. Councillor Codling.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, this is a unique situation in as much that the provider of the social, emotional, mental health provision that we use, we don't know of anybody else locally that can provide this service. So we would like to go out for a direct contract. However, this notice, a voluntary ex-ante transparency notice, gives other people the chance to come forward in case we've missed them, essentially. This is an essential service for our young people. And obviously we'll discuss it more in part 2. So proposed, Leader.
Councillor Gaines, come back in a moment. I'm just checking. Councillor McKinnon.
Well, perhaps echoes of last year, Leader, but I do have a question. Is it really the wisest idea to publicly announce, as you just did, that there is only one provider here in your eyes? Rather weakens the negotiating position on price somewhat, is it not?
Councillor Codling.
I don't believe so. I believe we've already been in negotiation and I don't think that's going to change.
A lot of these services actually are one provider is the expert in their field, and therefore why wouldn't we go for the best? So I think that in some respects it's a given. It's a very, very important part of a child's development. Social, emotional, mental health is vital, and we know how much that's affected since COVID. So I think this is an excellent idea. Thank you, Chair.
I think it's a function of small markets that you end up with one dominant, capable supplier. But Councillor McGinn, you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Codling has just said that they're the only provider, or she thinks she is, and Councillor Gaines has just announced that they're the best. You said, why not go with the best? And again, given that this voluntary ex-ante transparency notice, as Councillor Codling said, recognises the chance that there may be other providers, I think that's inherent in this framework, I would really urge the administration not to make statements like that when they, of course, want to get the best possible service for our service users. But we also, at this time, need to get it at the best price. And I'm just very concerned that that is not what is happening with these statements.
Okay, well, obviously we'll come back to in part 2 and we'll talk money and we'll have the vote. So for now, I'm noting it and then we'll come back to in part 2. Because I want to get to members' questions and the Ross McKinnon show. I beg your pardon. I want to get to members' questions, which I'm moving on to now. And I tease you a little bit because 14 might be an all-time record. 14 member questions from one member. So this should be fun. But the first one up is Councillor Vickers. Is he still with us online? To Councillor Gawley.
Yes, I am asked the question in my name, the one and only question.
Thank you. Councillor Gawley, with you.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. The specific type of experimental traffic regulation order required for this project can only be made with the consent of the Secretary of State for Transport. Officers have submitted an application to the Department of Transport to make the order, and we are awaiting their response in the coming weeks and been able to realise the benefits of trialling an extension to pedestrianisation in Newbury Town Centre. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that answer as far as it goes. It prompts me to ask, how many weeks do officers expect us to have to wait for the Department of Transport to answer? Is there a time limit for them, or as there is for us in their rules, 18 months, I think it is, I believe, for a ETRO, for what is, I think, I'm sure you agree, an eminently sensible way of making any significant change to traffic arrangements in a town centre, rather than doing something based purely on perception, understandable perceptions perhaps, and then having to undo the changes when they don't work at great expense. So how long do we have to wait for this decision?
Yes, thank you. We submitted our updated application a few weeks ago, and I would give the time frame of as long as a piece of string, but I am hopeful that we will hear something back by the end of March. The 18 months that you refer to is the time that an experimental traffic regulation order can be in place for, before either having to convert it to a permanent TRO or rolling it back. But once we've confirmed feedback from the DFT, we'll be in touch with key stakeholders to update and inform, so that residents and businesses can make the most of the benefits that extending pedestrianisation brings us, such as boosting the local economy by making the town centre more attractive to visitors, encouraging longer stays and increasing footfall, enhancing the environment by offering a more pleasant atmosphere for outdoor dining and public events with less pollution and reduced traffic, improving safety by reducing the interaction between motor traffic and pedestrians, and also encouraging active travel by creating a more walkable and bike-friendly town centre. Thank you again for your question.
And all we want to do is trial something.
Exactly, a trial. Thank you.
Moving on. Councillor Burke to Councillor Gaines.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Budd. The Members' Committee bid panel for 2024-25 met on the 11th of February. I understand that the bids have all been decided, and once all those bid applications have been advised of their decision, which I believe is going on as we speak, and also the budget for next year has been confirmed, then we will start the members' community bids probably as early as May. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Councillor Gaines. That's very encouraging. I asked the question because there was no members' round that finished in 24 last year. So we skipped somehow a year was skipped. We distributed money in 23, we're distributing money in 25, nothing was distributed in 24. And that was because the process didn't start until well into 2024. Whereas the normal, historically, and you'll remember this, Councillor, the process normally starts in February for distribution after the summer. And I know it was an election year, but we've never skipped a year in the past.
Can I just put that? Oh, you want to go to?
I'm confused. In 23-24, we had a members' bid round and we distributed money 23-24 financial year, municipal year. Now we've done it again in 24-25. So how did we skip?
That was what I was going to say, Leader.
Oh, no, I've not done it again.
You have, Leader. Basically, Councillor Brooke, we actually had a situation where it was delayed. And because it was delayed, we actually have got the bids are applicable until this time next year. In between times, we're going to start the bidding process again in May. So effectively, there's going to be 2 in this 18-month period.
I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you for that response. And I hope you do manage to catch up.
We will, but
I'm not going to discuss why we didn't, but I think you know why we didn't.
Do you need reminding?
I know what the implication is, but the fact is, the start, it got forgotten. That's what really happened.
No, it didn't get forgotten. It did not get forgotten. We're moving on. It did not get forgotten.
Discuss this in part 2.
Councillor McKinnon to Councillor Gawley.
Yes, thank you, Councillor McKinnon, for your question. Burfield Bridge is a very complex set of flood risk challenges, and representing a ward myself that has significant flooding issues, I feel for the residents that are faced with these risks. You may or may not be aware that council officers have arranged a site meeting with residents of Burfield Bridge, ward members, along with the Environment Agency and the Canal and Rivers Trust to consider the flooding issues and potential mitigation and help to really ensure that all risk management authorities are there to answer residents' questions. This is a further follow-up to a meeting that was arranged prior to Christmas. I think it was before Christmas. The Service Director for Environment has personally overseen these and has been directly involved in helping and advising residents to date. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Councillor Brooks earlier on extolled the virtues of a closed question, which elicited a yes or no answer. And my question was, will you designate a named senior officer to act as a single point of contact? That's the question. I am aware of the meeting tomorrow. I'm planning on being there with my wellies as well. And I'm getting a bit of stick for that because my wife wants to go shopping tomorrow to pick out a birthday present for her. But I've said we can't go until after 12 because I'm going to go down and see what's happening at Burfield Bridge. So my supplementary, Councillor Gourley, is please will you answer my original question? Will you designate a named senior officer to act as a single point of contact?
Well, I think I have answered that question. That the Service Director for Environment, Mr. Winstanley, has been, on point with local residents. So yeah,
has been. But will he be the single point of contact going forward?
I'm sure he will be. Yes.
Thank you very much.
And your wife's birthday is the 14th of February.
No, it's the 22nd, but we're getting in early just to make sure that
I think
we don't miss
if it's the
anything.
14th of February, you do one present for Valentine and their birthday. You quids in.
If I spoke about the McKinnon approach to Valentine's Day, I might not get re-elected, so I'm going to leave it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, where are we now? Councillor Wollaston. Just checking this. Can you? Okay, no, you carry on. I beg your pardon. This is to you, Councillor Foote.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Wollaston, for your question. In it, you seem to be conflating the revenue and capital budgets. As you well know, collection and emptying of dog waste bins comes out of revenue budget, and the cost of reinstating the football ground at Faraday Road comes out of the capital budget, two entirely different pots of money. However, leaving that aside, we do have examples of parishes and town councils that are more than happy to take over the collection of dog waste bins, as it gives them more sort of fine control of the emptying regime, and this fits in well with their residents' wishes. Regarding the, as you say, pathetic football pitch, this is, of course, the Faraday Road football ground, a significant stadium that was destroyed by your administration and that our administration has been clear about reinstating. In just 21 months, I'm proud to say that we have restored the ground to Football League Step 7 status and are continuing to work with our community to maximise this important community asset. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do. My ward in Lambourne has taken up the cudgels of dealing with dog waste. I just wonder how you might persuade others to do so.
Well, that's interesting because my ward in Newbury Town Council has also done the same thing, and it seems to be working extremely well. And obviously, we have extremely good communication with the parishes, and that will be ongoing. Thank you.
Councillor Wollaston, you might remember the service offering we made to parish and town councils. We launched it in here at the last district parish conference. And there's been a good take-up of that because we clarified what they get for the money, how it will work. Negotiations are ongoing. The last time I looked, there were 14 parishes engaged in discussing with us. This, to me, is the start of a commercialisation programme, frankly, for this council. So I thank you for your question, except for the fact you've sort of weaved in some statements that I can't agree with. And I'd like you to go back to that question, please, Mr. Chiverton, D. Because it is opinion, sir, that you believe the money was wasted. It is opinion, sir, that you believe it's a pathetic playing pitch. And I don't, Councillor McKinnon will remember if we used to do that in questions that we posed. But well, hang on, maybe we'll have to look up some examples. But I'm not sure the question should be interlaced with opinion that is simply yours, almost like a mock press release that when it goes into us, it's got a fair bit of attitude. So I make the point, and as I say, we possibly were guilty of it ourselves, but can we try to steer clear of it? Councillor McKinnon.
Councillor Brooks, I think you've said to a couple of members of the public tonight, the executive member will answer the question as they see fit. We'll continue to ask our questions as we see fit. And if there's opinion in there, you can rest assured that we think our opinion is correct. And I'm sure you'll correct us in your answers if you think it's not.
Yes, I mean, we've got something from you later. I'll probably return to this. But thank you anyway. And thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Boat to Councillor Codling.
Thank you, Councillor Boat, for your question. As you know, we are part of the Delivering Better Values programme. As part of that, we've established a project which is reviewing and updating the definitions used to assess children and young people's needs as part of their education, health and care plans. We're co-producing this with stakeholders, including representatives from schools. Once completed, this will guide the level of support that will be allocated to schools to meet needs, and it's anticipated this work will be completed by September of this year, and with a phased implementation ending April 26. Do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you for your answer, Councillor Codling. At the paper that went before the Governance Committee on the 28th of January, the high needs block appeared in a few line items in the risk register. And there were comments being made about little or no scope to make further savings in the high needs block. And a lot of commentary about really about government, about legislation being introduced by government. There is also a mention there of the thresholds. The administration, as I said in my earlier on Tuesday in the scrutiny committee, at the debrief from the local the LGA peer review on the 9th of February last year, Councillor Rory Love made the point strongly that this administration needed to address the thresholds if there were to be any hope of bringing down the bill. Is the Better Values initiative going to address that directly or indirectly?
It is already addressing this, and we are sorting out the thresholds. We can't change those thresholds. They are set in that 2014 legislation of where they moved to EHCPs. What we're trying to do is clarify with schools how those children are quantified in that and what they will get as a level of funding. The need for young children and students and that going into school, the need is more complex and there are more of them. That's the reason the high needs block is still continuing, but we are addressing the thresholds. We are reviewing everything with schools.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to Councillor McKinnon to Councillor Codling.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon, for your question. So, it was our manifesto commitment to return Newbury Football Club to its spiritual home at Faraday Road. Newbury Football Club runs over 20 junior teams as well, ranging from under 7 all the way up to under 18. These 20 junior teams will involve over 400 children playing football at Faraday Road. And also they have a waiting list of children wanting to play at Faraday Road. We all recognise the physical and mental health benefits of playing sports. The capital investment made by this administration was not a waste of money. We did not squander it. In fact, the cost to revenue is less than the planned annual rent, which was going to be payable by West Berkshire Council to Newbury Rugby Club. This is without, as I say, the preventative benefit to our children, family services budget, and the SEN DSG liability such. So in fact, this is a huge cost benefit to West Berkshire's finances. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Thank you, Councillor Cottingham. I'm going to correct you a little bit. I know your manifesto very well. I've read it from cover to cover, and at no point does it say that you will return Newbury Football Club to its spiritual home. It said that you would return community football to Faraday Road, but that's just a point of correction. There was an opinion in there, wasn't there, about squandering? And
I was going to...
Councillor Cottingham has told me that he disagrees, and I think that's okay. But you mentioned my question, based on your answer then, Councillor Cottingham, is, and you mentioned the sports hub, would it not have been better to have proceeded with that project? And the reason I say squander here is because this can be used for 2 matches a week, whereas the sports hub would have been used 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, and would have had so much more benefit, and the benefits of which you ably described about the benefit of sport and football to the community.
Thank you for your supplementary question. I actually had a conversation with Sport England and about the proposed sports hub at Newbury Rugby Club. Their opinion was football, it's the wrong place at the wrong time to have football at Newbury Rugby Club. Doesn't work.
You're positing a point where what is at Faraday Road now is an end in itself. But I think, we have consultants looking at the feasibility, viability of putting a 3G pitch there. So we're on the journey, we're not at the end of it. And I can see how much you hate the football going back to Faraday Road, and you're going to keep going on about it against a huge number of people who wanted it back there. But, you keep taking your position. I think you're totally at odds with what the residents of this district want. But it's not the end of the journey.
Councillor Brooks, if I might, you put some words in my mouth there that I hate football being back at Faraday Road. That's not the case. I don't feel that strongly about it. What I hate is money being squandered.
There is no squandering going on here. I'm sorry, I'll have the last word on this. You weave this word in, you've got to keep banging on it. It's not squandered at all. It is very, very good value for money to get that area with sport and football again. Have you been down and watched a match there? There's a great atmosphere in our town centre. And when they're in the 3rd round of the Cup playing Manchester City, there'll be thousands of people trying to get down there and going into town and spending money. Come on, that's the right place for this sort of activity. Moving on. What have we got? What's the next one up?
It is to me, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Burke, for your question. As a ward member for Clay Hill, where Thames Water tankers were tankering for 7 months, 7 days a week, and 24 hours a day, I completely empathise with affected residents in the area. It's unfortunate that Thames Water's infrastructure is insufficient to meet the basic needs of its customers and our residents. I think a more pertinent question would be how have successive governments allowed the country's largest water company's assets to fall into such disrepair? However, we are where we are, and we are in a position where Thames Water are tankering, and it is essential to meet the basic needs of our residents. And council officers have been on site to ensure their activities are carried out safely. In fact, highways officers have been out again to site yesterday and today and highlighted repairs that need to be rectified, such as potholes and patching in the area, and this will be carried out and we'll be recharging that to Thames Water. We are also pressing Thames Water for action to invest in permanent solutions across the district, but that unfortunately is largely out of our hands. Do you have a supplementary question?
Well, a comment. It's just not good enough. That's my concern, Councillor Galley, because I walk my dog every day close by the Beenham pumping station. The mess they've made of the verges, the roads themselves.
Question coming?
I think that council needs to do more, and that's what I want to hear from you. What are you actually going to do? Pressing and all that kind of stuff, it's not good enough.
Councillor Gawley.
I think it's a fair question, and I remember being in this very chamber when we tabled a motion actually about Thames Water, and we got shot down significantly by members of the opposition for wasting time.
What are you going to do?
So, and I think that did detail what we were doing and what we were also calling for. So I will go back to the point that I made just now, which is officers are on site. We're reviewing the site. We've recognised that there has been damage done by Thames Water, and we're going to fix that, and we will recharge those costs. And we are meeting Thames Water around a multitude of infrastructure challenges around the district, and we will continue to do so. It's a shame. It really is a shame, though, Leader, just to come back, that motion didn't really garner the support at the time. And I think it's somewhat odd that Councillor Burke's coming back now with a particular issue in his own ward without supporting the prior one.
Okay, I'll move on. Please, may I?
It was a question, it's been answered. You then made a statement. That's been answered as well. So I think we're done.
Councillor Gurley criticised me for representing my residents and expressing concerns that they bring to me at every parish meeting I go to.
Yeah. Noted. I think we're on H, are we? Councillor McKinnon to Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon, for your question. For the record and for avoidance of doubt, there has never been any conflict of interest during the process of returning football to Faraday Road. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do. And I remember when I raised this point at the last council or executive meeting, I remember Councillor Brooks got a bit exercised about it. And I believe you. I do. The problem is, and as an accountant, you'll know, with codes of professional ethics, and I'll frame this as a question. Do you not agree with me that just as important as the absence of a conflict of interest is the absence of an appearance of a conflict of interest? And could that not have been the case here?
No.
You said I got exercised. I think you got exercised as well, and I absorbed
Or exercise partners.
The anxiety that you put forward, and said I wouldn't tolerate it.
Yeah, well, it's not something to tolerate. There is an apparent conflict of interest there.
That's your position. You've had an answer. We're moving on. I think, who have we got next? Councillor Burke to Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Councillor Burke, for your question. We've now had confirmation that the funds are available to continue the work of the family hubs. This is excellent news for children and families accessing the valuable support from the family hubs. The heads responsible for these family hubs have received confirmation on Monday. We are committed to support these family hubs, but unfortunately much of the funding that supports it comes from Department for Education and Public Health. I sort of assumed you might have known that. We will continue over the next 12 months, which is what we've got the funding for. As I understand it, this negotiation with Public Health and DfE happened most years. And unfortunately, I don't think the two new heads were aware of that. That obviously hadn't been passed on to them. We're reviewing how the family hubs will operate to ensure that our offer to children and families across West Berkshire is consistent and supports our early help approach. We are actually going to be expanding this from not just 0 to 5-year-olds, but 0 to 19 or 0 to 25 for those young people with SEND as part of guidelines from government that are coming through. We'll be working with the current providers to ensure the services continue to be delivered within the communities as they are currently, while we're working with them to secure the long-term future of the hubs in West Berkshire. There'll be a number of meetings held with all partners. Do you have a supplementary question?
Oh, thank you for your reply, Councillor Codling. That's really good news. I'm very pleased to hear that. I do have a supplementary, and it relates to the letter that was sent to the head teachers of both Victoria Park and Hungerford. I hope that you didn't see that letter before it was sent out, but do you regret that a letter of that kind that really caused a lot of distress amongst the staff of both family hubs, do you think it could have been worded better?
I agree with you. It could have been, as I understand it, both hubs were warned back in the summer that we had no confirmation of funding and that this would happen. And unfortunately, this letter, I didn't see it, you're right, is a formal just notification of 13 weeks. I agree, it could have been worded better.
Thank you.
Next one is Councillor Kennan to myself, I think, is it? No, I beg your pardon. Okay, Councillor Gaines. I'm jumping the gun.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. As you know, this council has not adopted the local plan. In fact, we have fought at every stage against it being adopted. However, we've been forced to bring it to its current state by the Labour government after your administration rushed it through, thereby foisting on residents in Thatcham, Cold Ash and Bucklebury. And so, no, I don't agree. I, like you, have no idea what the next 15 years will bring. What I can say is that this administration will seek to ensure that a new local plan will focus on provision of much needed homes and infrastructure, economic growth and protection of our valued landscapes, towns and villages to get the very best for all of our communities, but in our case, we'll get it in the right locations. Have you got a supplementary?
I do, thank you, Councillor Gaines, and I fully support the latter half of what you said. First half might have been considered to have been an opinion, but I'm very glad that you confirmed that you don't agree with that statement. And given that, will you please have a word with your member who is posting that statement through his residence doors as a statement of fact while he's seeking to solicit financial donations to fight the local plan? And perhaps encourage him to get his trainers on to correct it.
I have no control over publications that local members put through their doors.
Next question to me. You revved up on that one. So this one, the Members' Code of Conduct is very clear that members must never solicit gifts or hospitality. You then posit that, do I consider that a member directly soliciting financial donations from the residents to support a particular cause could be in breach of the Code of Conduct? I've checked with the monitoring officer and the answer is no. I do not believe that these donations, the financial donations being gathered, are in any way a breach of the Code of Conduct or be open to misinterpretation. It is absolutely within the gift of any member of council, any councillor up and down the country, to raise funds to enable another body to campaign against a specific course of action. So I do not believe that any member doing that, whoever that might be, is in breach of the Code of Conduct or open to misinterpretation or give the impression the member be under an obligation to the donor. I do not agree. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, Councillor Brookston. Thank you for that very clear answer. Given Councillor Gaines's answer to the previous question, would you consider that there perhaps is a code of conduct issue if a member is soliciting financial donations based on untruths or statements which are not the case?
No, I'm not going to give you succor on that one either. As you know, and as you do in different ways, you support your residents. Sometimes you might well be at odds with your own group, but you support your residents. And we have that sort of code within our group. And I don't really have much more to add. That's where we are, and that's where we're going to stay at the moment and ongoing. Thank you. Next one up to Councillor Gawley. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McKinnon, for your question. I mean, first off, I completely understand the concerns raised by residents with regards to this road closure and how disruptive they can be. This road, over the last several years, certainly before my time as well, has been subject to many road closures around that area to enable the maintenance of this, historic asset. Officers and the applicant have worked really hard to ensure that this road closure is kept to a minimum and therefore the disruption that will cause. As I'm sure you're aware, the council isn't in control of what road closure applications are received from third parties. The need to minimise disruption has to be balanced against the requirement to ensure that work on or near the road can be carried out safely and in accordance with relevant regulations. We also need to consider the safety of the diverted traffic, and we will be agreeing a robust schedule of diversion signs with the contractors to make sure that the diversion route is clear and that any unsuitable roads are signed accordingly. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do. It's probably just a clarification question to what you've just said. And like Councillor Bowick said, I have never had an issue in my ward which has generated such correspondence as this one. I really have. So I'm asking this on behalf of my residents, and I want you to imagine you're talking directly to them rather than the opposing political party. Is it the case then that it's going to be signage, and it's not just Back Lane and Mariners Lane, it's Scratchface Lane as well, but what else can the council do?
I mean, the council officers are professionals and they will take the right course of action, and highways are highways, and we can only, in so far as my knowledge, and Mr. Winstanley, feel free to correct me, is that we can guide drivers to make the right decision and follow diversion routes that are signed, but we can't police that per se. I absolutely feel the pain. Like I said, this road I think roads in that area around the college have been closed many times over several of years. So I completely understand the frustration that this will cause. And, and we will continue to hear feedback. And if there are concerns, we can look to address them at the time once the the road is closed and the diversions are in place. So feel free to continue to reach out to me, Councillor McKinnon, and let me know of any challenges you hear as the local ward member. I do think that we do need to make sure we are joined up and we continue to communicate on this as the road is closed and the various changes over that permit period take place.
Okay, thank you. We're up again, Councillor McKinnon. In fact, stand by, you're up and up and up and up on these next ones.
Just say before you go on, I think you said there was 14 or 13. I would have had one less. I was going to withdraw one, but I've actually left it in because I want to give you a bit of credit. So there's niceness in here.
Stand by members.
Or was that for somebody else?
Members?
Okay, so I was getting my hopes up there for a second. I was going to get some credit. I didn't think that was going to happen. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Councillor Burke. Yes, again, I have sympathy for the residents and the organisations that are going to be affected by this temporary road closure. And if there was any way to avoid or further mitigate the effects of the closure, then officers would have found it. I would suggest that affected parties fully familiarise themselves with the closure locations and discuss this with their transport providers as appropriate to ensure they use the most suitable alternative routes. Do you have a supplementary question? Thank you.
And okay. Next one up then is N. Back to you, I think, again. Councillor Gawley.
Yep. Thank you for this question. Our waste officers have conducted multiple site visits to this location. And since the initial report that you mentioned, approximately 17 black bags of fly-tipped waste have been cleared from this location. Additionally, between Feb 23 and January 25, 10 further instances of fly tipping have been removed from Island Farm Road. Currently, though, high water levels in the ditch mean it's currently unsafe for staff to fully inspect and remove remaining bags. However, a thorough inspection is planned for the spring once water levels have receded to assess it and remove any remaining waste. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do. So thanks, Councillor Gurley. So residents and myself won't be required to keep bringing this to the attention. This is on the waste team's radar and they will continue to go out until they can remove that waste safely.
Yep, I spoke to the team. They've got it in the diary to recheck the site once the water recedes, and we're committed to investigating it further. We take fly tipping really seriously. We're lucky to have such a green, and beautiful district. So absolutely, yeah, you won't need to. If there is an issue, again, just reach out and let me know. I'll follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Question to Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon, for your questions. Yes, many thanks for your straightforward question. We're always truthful with residents. The removal of the garden waste charge depends upon future events outside of West Berkshire's control. However, with the financial pressure West Berkshire Council currently faces, there is a very strong likelihood the garden waste charge will be still paid by West Berkshire residents in 2027. We will be reducing the garden waste charge for the lower council tax bands in 25-26, with 55% of residents seeing a reduction in their garden waste charge. Do you have a supplementary question?
No, I don't. Thank you. And for the ones that I wasn't accusing you of being untruthful. I was just encouraging you to continue to be truthful.
P in your name to Councillor Foot.
Yes, thank you very much for your question, Councillor McKinnon. The playing pitch strategy is currently under review and the final report is expected in the summer. This review will focus on evidence of existing provision and the need for playing pitches across the district to enable the council to prioritise its resources to deliver additional pitches, including 3G pitches. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Thank you, Councillor Foot. So I guess, can you assure me tonight then that Burfield FC, which, by the way, operates 49 teams of a weekend, and has never had the joy of having a council-owned pitch to call its home, that they're on your radar and that you will work with me and representatives of the football club to see how we can help?
Yes, it certainly will form part of the playing pitch strategy. And like we've said at other questions, please get in touch with me directly if you need any advice or any information that I can provide. I'll be very happy to do that in that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add, and it's not particularly about this per se, that we're in a bit of a holding pattern. The playing pitch strategy refresh, the refresh of the playing pitch plan, if you like, will be finished, I hope, around about June. That's going to open up all the opportunities. But the reason I've intervened here is we've asked for parish councils to come forward, either to the consultants we've got doing it or to the council directly, if they know of an area, piece of land they may own or they may not own, but it's in the sort of public open space where perhaps a sports facility could be provided. And I say that again tonight to them because I don't think the response has been terribly good. This one is clear-cut. You've told us where it could well be. But I'm using the opportunity to perhaps remind the parishes, particularly, to come forward in the way I've just described. And you want to come back, Councillor Foot?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Yes, that's a really good point to make. The other thing is just to elaborate that the report is due, as Leader said, round about end of June. And the reason for that is simply that we need to allow a few weeks of the cricket season to start so that we can look at cricket pitches. Now, obviously, in this chamber, we've spoken a lot about football, but cricket, remember, forms a very important part of playing pitches as well, as do, of course, other sports. But, you know, the need for identifying, cricket pitches is really important as well. So I just wanted to make that point. So thanks for letting me do that, Chair.
Thank you both for that.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity. Q, in your name to Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. I wish I could give you a more straightforward answer on key performance indicators or KPIs, but as I'm sure you remember, these things are often complicated. In this case, there is not a single indicator within the performance portal which captures this promise. People in need of assessment come through many different routes, many different situations. Once a need has been identified, there are factors which affect when a new package should begin. Our system ranks the importance of the issues being presented, meaning we can prioritise efficiently those that most need our help, or in this case, also known as triage. Then there are robust and timely processes in place to agree new packages of care. Aside from this, there are a number of other performance indicators which I review regularly with the Adult Social Care Senior Management Team. And there are indicators which are available to the general public under the wonderfully named ASCOF, or Adult Social Care Outcomes Framework. I'm pleased to say that in the recently published national results for 23-24, we are in the top 2 quartiles in 16 out of 22 indicators, which is an improvement from previous years. We are also bringing in new methods which will speed up the assessment process. The Adult Social Care Department excuse me, has now been able to evaluate a pilot of the artificial intelligence magic notes application. And the findings are that this will dramatically speed up the assessment process by minimizing associated administrative tasks. I am confident that we are pursuing opportunities to drive up efficiency and to make important progress in the timeliness of our work. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you. And you said yourself at the start of that answer, which is very detailed, and I thank you for it, that it's pretty complicated. And I think your answer demonstrated that. Would you not agree with me then that given that this was one of the key 6 pledges in your manifesto, and if a resident is wanting to decide perhaps whether to re-elect you or not in a couple of years, it should be as easy as possible for them to have a look and see how you did against those commitments. And perhaps would you commit to making it slightly less complicated for residents to follow your progress against that manifesto commitment?
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. I wholeheartedly agree with you that there should be clarity and transparency in all of these matters.
Next one up are to Councillor Foot again, it seems. Am I wrong?
No, it's me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor McKinnon, thank you very much for your question. We will look where to spend the money once that playing pitch strategy review has been completed. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Is it fair to say then that that £340,000 is in the capital strategy and you don't know how you're going to spend it?
As we've said, it will form part of the playing pitch strategy review, and obviously that will come out in due course.
S to Councillor Codling.
Thank you for your question, Councillor McKinnon. I can confirm that the money has now been allocated to do this work, the pedestrian guardrail, and our education officers have been in touch with the school and we're working out the layout and when this will happen. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do, and this is the one I left in. I could have withdrawn this because I spoke to the head yesterday and she told me what you've just told me. But I wanted to leave it in there to say thank you to you, Councillor Codling, and to you, Councillor Brooks, for your help in getting this sorted. And not only did I want to say thank you to you both, I wanted to stress to all members, either in the room or if they're watching, but just this is the sort of thing that makes you realise why you went into local politics. And this sounds really small, doesn't it? It's railings getting built outside the school, but it's the school that my children go to. And the head teacher has been tearing her hair out for the last few years and has been met with intransigence, not from portfolio holders, but it's a box ticking culture, and I know the leader is looking into this, so I'm not going to, I don't want to make public criticisms of individuals, but the ability to just get involved and to speak to people like yourselves and to unblock something that shouldn't really have been blocked and get a result which helps children's safety, and utterly delighted the teachers when I saw them on Tuesday. I know it sounds like a little thing, but it was wonderful to be able to do that. So members, don't always take no for an answer. And sometimes this administration actually does the right thing. And it was great. So thank you both. And yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm a happy man this week.
Pleased to hear it.
Now, Councillor McKinnon received an email from me, I think over the weekend, with some rather salty, direct language about how frustrated I was. And I spoke to the interim chief exec today about the process for doing small works, basically. It did occur to me that we've had 22 months of this frustration. Did you struggle to fix it in 18 years? Because it needs fixing, and the interim chief exec and myself agree on that, and I know that the executive top table do, we're going to make this work better. We're going to make this work better. We are not going to over agonize and cost thousands more than the task itself by moving it around this authority and spending officer time that just prolongs something that is so straightforward. There you go.
Thanks, Leader.
You've worked me up.
Look,
Towards the end of the meeting, you've worked me up.
I give you a lot of stick when I think you've done the wrong thing. So it's only fair to give you credit when you've done the right thing, and you made a difference to quite a few people. So thank you.
Right, number T is to Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon, for your question. I've done a little bit of research for comparable examples where tax policy promises have changed. So going back in history, in 2017, the then Conservative Chancellor George Osborne announced that corporation tax would be cut from 19% to 17%, only for Boris Johnson's Conservative government to phase this cut out. And he's then Chancellor to increase corporation tax to 25%, so nearly a 50% increase. This decision was made due to financial necessity to invest into public services. And to quote the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, I hope you understand that this is the fiscally sensible thing to do. The proposed change to the garden waste charge for 25-26 is the fiscally responsible thing to do in the current financial climate which we face, so that we can maintain the high quality services which we provide to the residents of West Berkshire. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do, and thank you for that. And I agree with you. It is the fiscally responsible thing to do. And I think your examples there of tax plan changes were interesting. Can I ask a question? When those changes happened, do you think the Liberal Democrats criticised the Conservatives for it?
I've no idea.
Okay, members, thank you for that. And that's taken 45 minutes, but we can now move on to the rest of the agenda. And we will be moving into part two. Can I need a vote for part two, do I, Nikki? Yeah. All those in favour of moving part two, I propose. Second. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, sir. Okay. So we're into part two, members. And we are then going back to the VAT, as I call it. And back to Councillor Codling, please.